What if you stopped trying to create content that stopped the scroll and started talking to your audience like they already care about what you have to say? If you're a coach or an expert who's tired of creating content that gets attention but doesn't build real community or lead to sales, this interview is going to move things for you in a big way. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Mackenzie Heflin to talk about how to tell stories online that do two things at once: create genuine connection and move people toward working with you. We dive into why treating platforms like Threads, TikTok, and Instagram like a private community and not a stage will completely change how your content performs. Mackenzie breaks down how to use simple, strategic storytelling to position yourself as an expert, share value without overwhelming your audience, and to build trust in a way that naturally supports your offers, without gimmicky hooks, performative content, or constantly having to be in front of the camera. If you want your marketing to feel more human, more aligned, and more effective, this conversation will give you a whole new way to think about storytelling as one of your most powerful sales tools. Let's dive in. I am so excited to have with us on the show today, Mackenzie Heflin. Welcome to the Nurse CEO podcast, Mackenzie.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, and before we hit record, we were both trying to figure out who came across who first, where we came across the person. I think I mostly think of Mackenzie as Threads, and she thinks she saw me on Instagram. So they connect with each other. So it's probably a little bit of both. But I've been following Mackenzie for at least a long enough period of time that I see your stuff come up a lot on Threads. And I really, really just love the storytelling strategy that it's combination like teach, but also having been in the space for almost, gosh, like 15 years at this point, I can just tell when something is done well as far as like communication and marketing in a way that isn't this like super like broy, buy now, get your discount before it expires kind of stuff. And so I've just really appreciated seeing your content, especially on a platform like Threads, where all you have is your written word to really be able to get people's attention. And the nice thing about that platform that I'm starting to notice is if you're good at telling stories and being engaging and sharing your expertise in a way that's actually interesting and not just like blasting in people's faces, it's actually a platform that can really get you in front of ideal clients very quickly. So I wanted to bring Mackenzie on the show today to talk about her approach to storytelling because, first of all, like I said, I just really like it. I think it's very effective and I think it aligns really well with the more, expert driven type of approach to marketing that we teach. And it's something that I think is a skill that all of us in this space, all of us in these kind of businesses should really be aiming to build. So, my first question for you, Mackenzie, is how the heck did you get into storytelling as your niche? Because it's a very specific niche, and I'm a little jealous that you get to be known for something so specific.
Yeah, so I started my business back in late 2019, early 2020. Really just like a love of business, a love of writing. And I started it in a private Facebook group. And I've told this story a million times as one of my core stories is how I was able to create such a tight-knit community in Facebook, and I had launched my business in that Facebook group with like 80 people inside. And at the time, I was doing high ticket. So, like, I was able to leave my job within 6 months of starting my business. I was writing content for clients in the health and wellness space, in the self love, self care space. They were seeing really, really quick results on Facebook, building communities on Facebook. And I got married, got pregnant. I was 7 months pregnant, and I woke up one morning, and the Facebook group that I had been building for 2 years at that point was gone. It was hacked, and somebody came in and deleted my account. With my account went my Facebook group. So I was kind of like starting over in a period where I did not want to have to start over. I had spent my entire pregnancy building up this community to create, the sustainable income while I was on maternity leave, and that was gone overnight. And so it took a really big hit, and I was very, very jaded on, from Facebook because I had reached out for support for so long. No one helped me, no one cared. And once I had had my daughter, I took about a year off because I was just so down about how to go about building a community again when I didn't feel like Instagram really had that sense of community. Like people weren't listening to me for me, they were scrolling on a For You page or scrolling on the Reels tab or scrolling on, just the regular feed on Instagram. I didn't feel like they cared about me. And so when I decided to get back into things, my daughter was 1 year old and I hired a TikTok specialist. I was like, I can't do Instagram. I'm tired of Instagram. So I went over to TikTok in 2022 and I just started, doing all these TikTok strategies. And at the end of 3 months, I was like, God, I just still don't feel like I have this community. What am I missing? And I went back. Thankfully, I had screenshot so many pieces of content from my Facebook group because I had used it to like sell different offers. And I had screenshots of all my content back then. And I just went through and I started reading everything that I had been posting in that group. And I was like, where are the connections? Where are the like coincidences? Like what is going on here? And I realized that so much of my content that I was posting in Facebook started with and it was a story. And it would be like how I did this, even though I was struggling with this, or how my client did this when she came to me having a hard time going through this. And it was like a light bulb moment, like, oh my God, it's just me. I'm just telling my story and then helping my community. So I got onto TikTok and I just started talking about that. And my very first viral video was 27 days into telling my story on TikTok. Because I said January 1st, I was like, I'm not doing bro marketing, stupid eye catching hooks that literally nobody cares about, like, especially me. I was like, I'm not doing any of that BS anymore. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to tell my story and I'm going to teach my people. And that very first video that went viral was me talking about how I treat TikTok like a private Facebook group, and everyone loved it. And they were like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing. Like, I don't want to just speak to an audience, I want to grow a community. And I started talking more about my story. When it was like how I built my brand with 400 followers making, $60,000 in 6 months, and like how I did it. And I'm not wearing makeup, I'm not taking flashy photos, like I don't have a website yet, like just all of these things. And I remember somebody asking, like, well, I don't know what my story is. And I said, let me help you find your story. And it just kind of went down that path of like, I've been doing this all along. It's just never been what I called it. I called it at the time a small audience marketing expert. That's what I called myself because I'm so good at creating tight knit communities with literally like, it doesn't matter how many followers you have, right? You can sell your stuff if you know your community. But I didn't realize that everything I had been doing was story until I went back and looked at it. So, story and how I kind of found it was like my community almost found it for me. They started asking the questions, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, like let's talk about this. And that's almost 3 years ago now that I just kind of kept snowballing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But you don't necessarily have any like formal training in storytelling. It's really more that was just your natural way of communicating, and people were like, "Help me do that same thing."
Mhm. Mhm.
That's so awesome because I think sometimes, there's something to be said for learning skills and being educated on particular strategies. And I do feel like people can err too much on that side where it's like, I just have to follow this formula and I have to do everything the way that I'm being told to do it. And we tend to get a lot of people like that, mostly because I just think a lot of our clients they were really good in school. They wanted to like do the assignment the way that the teacher wanted them to. And so what can happen is when they come to create content, like, yes, we want to give them launching points to be like, talk about this or think about it like this, or, ask these questions of yourself and go share. And they'll end up a lot of times, not everybody, but a lot of people will have this like, well, I'm not sure exactly how I'm supposed to say this to get the views, get the followers, get the sales. And For me, it's something that can get a little, I can feel a little frustrated by the current environment because I've been online blogging, creating content since I think my blog was launched in 2011. So going on like 14 years at this point. And back when I first started, there wasn't this expectation of like format, right? It was like you just shared what you thought. And if you had interesting things to say, people would find you and people would engage. And so I feel like there's a lot of pressure now to have this like you said, like the perfect hook and the perfect way of saying things and doing it in a way that gets the people to actually buy. And so I love that you have this kind of like you're taking what's a natural way of people like human communication tends to be done in stories, right? And turning it into something that people who are not necessarily skilled at that right now that they can start to build that skill.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I love what you said a minute ago about approaching content creation on some of these more broadcasty type of platforms as like a community. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly that means and if you have any like big picture tips for how to approach that?
Oh, I do. So I think a big thing for me is when I transitioned to this mindset shift, because it's just a mindset in a way of belief, right? When you create your content, it's you are not creating for an audience. You're not talking to people. You're not trying to get their attention as if like you're standing in the middle of a college campus and handing out flyers, right? Like pay attention to me, come to my class. If you want this, you can come here, and it's like you're handing things out, but no one cares, right? Because they weren't the ones that came to you, or like the way the information was presented. And so I visualize it as if these people that you are creating content for have signed up to sit in a classroom with you and you're teaching them. And now a lot of people can be like, well, I have nothing to teach. Well, I have like, right. And then that barrier again, it's like, it doesn't have to be that deep, right? What do they need to hear and how can you help? Like at the end of the day, that's what it is. And when you're creating this content, you have to visualize that there are people that want your advice. There are people that want to hear you. And it's just the difference of creating content when you're thinking about, okay, what do I have to do to like get the most attention or like create the like most eye-catching hook versus like I'm just going to sit down and tell people what they need to hear. Right. And to take it even a step further, it's like this actual visualization. I have my clients do this of like, tell me if you were creating for people in a private Facebook group, like literally you created a Facebook group, what would you call it? What would you name it? Because that will be the center of all the content you create and how it converts. Like actually visualize it, right? So like there are Facebook groups for Kindle readers, like, right? And you'll get in that Facebook group and you expect to learn what books to read on Kindle or coffee, right? Like best Starbucks copycat recipes, right? You get in that Facebook group and you expect to know or expect to see coffee recipes, right? So it's almost this expectation of I have this idea in mind. I have this community in mind. I have this mindset that the people are here that want my stuff, that want my offer, that want my help. And I'm just going to create for them, right? Because if you're in this private Facebook group and you're creating the content, you aren't having to get their attention because you already have it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just becomes a matter of like, this is how I did something. And if you want to do it too, here's how to do it. Versus like, stop what you're doing, pay attention, right? Those hooks that it's like, stop what you're doing, stop scrolling. And it's like, you don't need to tell them that they're already in your group. They want the information. You have their attention, give them the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's just, again, the different mindset of like, you aren't fighting for people's attention in the algorithm. Find your community. Like
Mm-hmm.
talk to the people who want your stuff. You know what they're struggling with because you probably struggled with it too. Speak to your past struggles, tell your past struggle stories, bring those people in that have struggled with the same thing, teach them how you went to the next step, which is what they want, help them through, and then, take them to an offer, take them to a sale, take them to a one-on-one, like whatever it is. It just simplifies the process and simplifies it in your brain to be like, I don't have to try that hard. I just have to share to get people to that next step.
Well, and I love that this is pointing out the fact that you shouldn't have to make people care about what you're talking about in your content. And I feel like a lot of the times people approach things like Instagram, TikTok, wherever they're showing up as this, like, I need to show them why they should care about what I'm saying. And I feel like the way that you're talking about it makes so much sense because it's like if somebody comes into a Facebook group, you kind of already have this expectation that they care about the topic. I mean, maybe once in a while somebody will like accidentally hit a button, but usually somebody's coming in because they're saying, yeah, raising my hand. I want this. This is something that I want to learn about. And so I love having that filter even just on your brain when you're creating content that you don't have to convince somebody why they should care about the topic in the first place. Because I feel like the way you'll show up in this, but even the first sentence you use to even talk about something will probably be different if you already believe that they care and they want what you're offering.
Yeah, and you'll never catch me trying to convince people why they should learn storytelling. I just teach people how to storytell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's the difference between problem awareness and solution aware. The people who are coming into your feed or find you or want your content, want to follow you, whatever, they're aware that they have the problem, they want the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to spend your brain power, your energy, your hard-earned time to convince people that this is something that they should do when they don't even know it's their problem, it's going to take weeks, months, years of them sticking around for it to click to be like, oh, I need this solution, right? Just talk to the solution and you'll get people who aren't aware yet to come up to you and be like, okay, I need this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Versus being like, you don't know why storytelling is important. Let me tell you. Like, that's just not getting in the right people that would be in this private Facebook group.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my question then is what's your opinion about there's this really big, I don't know how to describe it. I think some people are just learning from the same like top of the pyramid as far as coaches are concerned, because you'll start to see this like repetitive theme in the content that's going out, especially in the business coaching world, where it's like, don't educate. I even have seen ads where it's like, your highest paying clients don't care if you're good at what you do. And I'm like, that doesn't sound accurate. Like I feel like there's a sweet spot between not fire hosing people with like informational content that just makes them feel like they have everything they need versus making this assertion that your paying clients don't care if you're good at what you do, which I just think is like total BS. So what's your like if that's the ends of the spectrum, either just teach them until their eyeballs bleed or, assume they don't care at all. Where do you fall on that spectrum of balancing education with more of the content that just speaks to the transformation, speaks to the results that they want?
Yeah, I have two things to say about this. So, right. So, if I forget the second one, remind me there were two things because I just ramble and I talk. The first thing is I educate in almost every single piece of content I create. But the education doesn't come until the story is over, until the story, my cat, until the story is about to, it's finishing, right? So when I think about educational content, you have to do it, but you can do it in a way that still talks to the people that are aware of the solution that they want. So when I'm speaking to clients that are specifically like really stuck in that educational how to mode, the simplest shift I have them make is how I. So instead of like how to book your next client, it's how I am booking my next client, or how to lift weights, how I lift weights. It's just a very simple shift because it makes your audience care about you and not just the content,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when I'm thinking about creating a community, I want my community to care about me and not just the information that I'm giving them. right? I want them to, when they think of story, they come to me. They're not Googling, what I would have said to them. They're coming to me because they can trust that I can offer them the result. So when I say educate and give educational content, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just do it in a way that makes your audience care about you, right? Because I love a good educational piece of content, right? Like I've been on TikTok, I'm knitting now, and every time I see a piece of content that's like teaching me how to knit, cool, like I want to learn something. People want to learn. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Learning is how we grow. And so if your audience, if you're going to get them to convert and buy something from you, it's most likely because they want to learn something. So introducing educational content inherently is not bad, but if you're stuck in the how to and nothing's working, transition to how I. It's a very, very simple way to start shifting educational content to get your audience to care about you.
Mhm.
The second thing is you cannot give them so much information that it overwhelms them. And so I only ever give one piece of information at a time. So I present my piece of content with the story. It's either a relatability factor or an authority statement, something I want to teach them, right? And then I'll transition it into whatever I'm going to teach them. But I only ever give one thing away. I only give one step of the framework. I only give them one piece of information, one mindset shift, one piece of inspiration or motivation. Because any more than that, they're probably not at the point where they can accept that information if they're not a paying client or if they have not invested in your services already because they won't understand what you're talking about. And that will not lead to conversion, that'll lead to confusion. So when I am doing educational content, I refuse to use like steps in any of my content. Like I won't say step one, step two, step three. I won't do tips. I will just say, like, here's how I'm able to storytell in every single piece of content. This is the one thing I make sure I do before I write down what I'm going to say. Right. One thing, and then I'll give that tip. And then I'll say, if you need more support, make sure you're following. This is what I do every single day. So it's just one piece of information that's like that golden nugget for them that can really open the doors for them, that builds that trust too, because you understand that that boundary is, I'm not going to give them any information that's going to overwhelm them. They can come in, take this information, go take action on it, see results, come back when they're ready to buy, because they have to understand the full picture. So that's also something really important with educational content, is if you're going to educate, make sure there are boundaries in place. Make sure you understand those boundaries and make sure your audience understands those boundaries as well.
Mhm. This is something that I see a lot in our program because we teach one of the big things we teach in the NBA program is methodology design. And so basically taking just somebody's skill sets, their experience, their perspective, and really crystallizing it into an actual, like, here's how I take my clients from A to Z. And I love that that layers in really well to pulling out almost like little slivers of what you would teach for a very specific how to within one of those steps that you would take somebody through in your overall process. Because, once you have that process figured out, it's actually pretty easy to just be like, oh, I'm going to talk about, hydration today. And let me just go like really deep. What's my favorite electrolyte powder for hydration that will help people have better energy? Right. It's like the ability to just like instantly come up with something useful without having it to be this like massive, like, lecture that you're trying to give online. It just comes so much faster when you already know what are some of those big pillars and those big action steps that you're going to take somebody through in the program. And I love that, just pulling one little thing out is still really valuable. And it does naturally create that desire to be like, oh, I just got this one little thing that's really helpful. What else could I get if I get the full picture? Quick question. So we work with a lot of people who they're not their ideal client. So they're like, whether it's a man that helps with fertility for women or something where it's like they've never been in that situation, they never will be in that situation. Do you just say, instead of saying, here's how I do this, do you just add a few words to say, here's how I help my clients do this? Or is there a different approach that you take?
Yeah, so that is one of the easiest ways to transition that. I think something also really important is when you are in a position where your clients are not, it's not your story, right? And I see this a lot with my clients who are doctors and nutritionists and fertility specialists. Like they haven't had the same struggles, so they have that barrier where it's like, well, it's not my story. How do I do this? And so that's where educational content is going to come in handy, right? Because you have to be able to educate your audience still. Here's how I help my clients. Another great way is client stories. So instead of inserting your own story, it'll be a client story of like, I was working with a client who came to me really struggling with XYZ. Here's how I supported them, right? So you're still inserting your authority, your expertise, but you're still bringing in those stories and almost introducing like another character in the story of your client. So there's another avenue for somebody who is watching you or following you to build that trust with you without it's just you saying it, right? So it's like another voice that is saying, okay, here was my client, here's what I walked them through, here's how I helped them, here's how I supported them, right? Besides the traditional like authority method, just being like, I've been a fertility specialist for the last 10 years, and here's how I help my clients increase their vitamin D or something like that. Very, very particular something to what they do. But besides the authority, I think client stories and positioning yourself as the expert amongst your community is also very, very important.
Mhm. And I actually find that to be one of the easiest types of stories to tell, especially if you're working with clients one on one, because pretty much anytime you get off a call with a client, it's like, what did I tell that person to do? Let me like just kind of, make it anonymous. Obviously, you're not giving them personal details on social media, but it's like, okay, well, this person came to me today with a question about this, and here's how I answered it. Let me just go tell my audience about I just wrapped up with a client who asked a question about this and I wanted to share it with you. Right. And so I think it actually has that twofold benefit of kind of sneakily saying, I have clients, right? It's like, you're like, I do this for real. I get paid to do this. People work with me. So it's that kind of subtle social proof. But then I do really love that style of education because I think for most people, that's at least the people I work with, that's where they really shine is on the I'm going to help somebody who's face to face with me that I, understand what they're going through. I know, we have a background together. I'm trained to do this and it's something that I think comes out really easily and naturally for them when they're working with a client. And then, hey, let's just like translate that exact conversation you had into something that you can post publicly and not make it this big, like, I have to use the exact right words so that people are gonna, buy from me. So that I think is a really easy thing that people can do starting like right now as you're listening to this, your next client conversation, just write something down that could be a story to tell, even if it's just like, I might tell this story later, but just take notes because I really think that your client conversations are the best place for that kind of stuff. Are there any like mistakes or I don't want to say myths. Sometimes like myths are like it's not necessarily a myth. It's almost just something that they're not even aware that they're doing that can trip people up when it comes to telling stories.
Yeah. So I've come across a lot of clients who struggle with storytelling because they think it has to be this like huge, like cinematic kind of masterpiece. And it's like, if I'm telling a story, I have to go 10 years deep and I have to tell the entire story. And I can't break my story up and I can't just focus on one struggle because they have to see the whole picture, right? A lot of clients rambling, right? So it's just like they start the story and they don't know how to end the story. A lot of that contributes to the fear of storytelling. And I say this so often, it's like I've been storytelling every single day for 3 years, and you guys don't know a lot of my personal life at all. Like, I don't share my daughter's face online. Like, I don't talk about my husband. I don't share like these super vulnerable moments that don't have to do with business because that doesn't really matter, right? So, like, when I'm storytelling online, to grow and monetize my business, I'm telling stories that have to do with growing and monetizing my business, right? So it's not like I'm taking moments about my childhood that I have to then expand and talk about the way it shaped me. And like, you don't have to do that. Tell a story about a client struggle and move on to how you help them, right? Like, let's keep it simple here, right? And so when you're telling those stories, there's that ending, right? So my stories are really only 1 to 2 sentences long. They position me as the expert and authority. They build relatability and connection, and my community knows why they're there. I end this story and then I move into how I help them. Again, value, motivation, inspiration, any sort of education. It's really important there's that end piece, and you can move them from story to I'm the authority and I can help you. Otherwise, it's just telling a story, and stories don't necessarily make you money unless there's a point to the story, right?
Hmm.
And so it's like it's a way to cut the rambling, cut the feeling that this has to be deeper than it is when it really doesn't. It really doesn't have to be that deep.
What do you think causes that feeling of I need to make this like a Marvel movie level of story?
I think every single time I run into a storyteller like on Instagram, it's a performance, right? It's like there's a phone here and then there's a phone here and there's a camera movement and then there's an angle shift and it, it's turned into like how can I gather the most attention, right? And it's performative, I think. And I think stories, like in general, movies and TV shows are that way because they're telling a story. They're not selling you on the product in the story, in the TV show or in the movie, right? And so after I had my daughter, I needed to be able to like sit down and record a video while she was at nap time, and it was not going to be possible to make this like crazy 15 different frame type overly edited videos because I didn't have the time, I didn't have the energy, I didn't have the want or the need to do that because when I was growing in Facebook, people didn't care about that. They cared that they got results from the information I was giving them. So at the end of the day, I think there's just a lot of misinformation about what makes a good story. And there's a difference between a storyteller as a content creator and a storyteller as a business owner. And
Mm,
focus on the business side, because if you want to be a business owner that grows a stable business for years to come, your audience doesn't care that you're a good content creator. They care that you can deliver the information you are promising you can deliver, right? So that whole misconception of like, where do people get the idea? I think it's just in their head that it has to be difficult or it has to be different because you're creating content on social media. But you don't have to be a content creator, you're a business owner. So
hmm.
let's figure out ways to package your offer in different stories and just present that information without this having to be like a whole spectacle, sort of.
Hmm. Well, and I think that's going to change a lot of people's thoughts about social media use because you do log on and some of the stuff that does catch more attention is the highly produced. And there's nothing wrong with that content in and of itself. It's not like I don't think Mackenzie, you're saying that it's bad content. It's entertaining, it's interesting, it's obviously getting a lot of eyeballs, but that's not necessarily what a business owner needs. And if you're setting the bar this high, if you're listening to the podcast, my hand is out of the frame. If you're setting it that high and you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do that. Like, it's just too hard. My life is too busy. I got too many clients right now. I can't even like fit time in to send an email, let alone, like you said, like edit a multi-framed, highly engaging content piece. I feel like that gives people a lot of permission to just chill out about it and not worry about having to have this like really polished video experience for it to still work for them. And I also think, for the people that we work with, I think another piece that could play in, and I'd be curious what your opinion is they don't think it's valuable to just give one little tip. It's almost like they have this belief that if I just give one little tip and I know that's not enough for them, then I'm going to feel bad because I'm like withholding information, I'm gatekeeping, whatever the whatever the word of the day is to describe not giving away your entire expertise in a single post. But I feel like for a lot of the people that we work with, they're just like, how could that possibly be valuable for me to just give like one little slice of the story or the information or whatever? And I think that can lead to a lot of excessive volume in the individual piece of content. And then I think another layer of that can be they're not fully convinced of the value of what they're selling. So they feel like they have to like over explain why their stuff is so valuable. And then they just ramble. I say this as somebody who this is definitely something that can sneak up on me where it's like, I'm just like, I just want you to understand how valuable this is. So I'm going to talk forever. But I feel like it's something that when you're someone who has a lot of expertise, you've been trained and educated, you have years of experience, it's almost like a completely different perspective to come at it and say, no, me sharing one thing is valuable. Is that the experience that you have when you're working with people?
Oh, for sure. And I think you have to think big picture, right? Because I was just filming a TikTok video on this morning, and it was the idea of discipline and the idea of doing something for a long time and doing something for like years. So if I'm thinking like right now, today, I want to film a video, it's going to be as valuable as possible, but like I post it and 200 people see it, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are giving the most value that you can. And that's like your best piece of content. Well, it might feel like that for you, right? That information needs to be repeated again and again and again and again, right? So if you can find ways to break up your content so you can be consistent and you can show up every single day and just share one thing, and it adds on top of each other, right? Something that I have been thinking about since I've been creating content for the last 5 years is like every single piece of content will layer on each other. And if you put your focus in one piece of content doing the heavy lifting for you, what about the person that came into your to follow you last week that didn't see that post that you made 3 months ago, right? And it's just that constant idea of putting so much pressure on one thing to perform and be the best and the most eye-catching, and it's just like, if you can stay consistent and repeat yourself as often as possible and let your content do the work for you, but it has to be you adding in different things in layers, right? That's where the real gold is. Because I've been saying the same thing every single day online for over 3 years. And it's true because I went back to my old TikTok videos that I was posting 3 years ago and I was like, oh my God, this is the same thing I have been saying for 3 years. And I went back and I posted them again on Instagram. I posted those videos from 3 years because I was like, guys, like, you don't understand that like repeating yourself is not a bad thing. I think some people get maybe exhausted at the idea, but once you get in the habit of saying one thing and repeating yourself and getting good at that, you can then focus on client work and doing the stuff you really love behind the scenes, right? Because no one wants their job to be like putting up their phone and recording a piece of content every day. It's the client work that we love and changing our community and changing, our clients' lives that we truly love. Like it's not like the content. That's just something you have to do. But if
Mm-hmm.
you can break it down, give one piece of really, really valuable information away, change that person's life, build that trust, build the community, and then do that as often as possible, you're going to create the community that wants to stick around for years to come because they
Mm-hmm.
get a different piece of you every single time they see you.
Mm-hmm. I was actually going to ask you about repetition because I think I saw the post that you did that was saying this is literally a 3-year-old video that I just reposted. How do you approach repetition? Because I feel like I fully agree that repeating is super helpful, even just for the creator themselves. Because to me, what sounds exhausting is having to come up with something new every single time you go to post. So being able to repeat yourself is very helpful. But I also think sometimes you could be repeating things that are not working, right? It's like just because you're just because you've said it before doesn't mean that it's something that should be repeated or is valuable for your business to be repeated. So, how do you approach repetition so that people are actually repeating something that's going to work and grow their business versus just repeating stuff that's kind of like not doing anything for their audience growth, for their sales, anything like that?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to repetition, you have to understand those layers that center you as the expert, right? So when I think about repeating my story, the story from 3 years ago of authority is not going to be the same story today, right? 3 years ago, maybe I had only worked with 50 clients and now I've worked with 4,000, right? So that story in and of itself will be different, but it's the same idea of what am I doing here, right? The purpose is growing an audience that sees me as the expert.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have that pillar of like authority content, and every time you go to repeat yourself, it's going to grow because you are always growing your community, your sales, whatever the case may be, right? The other half of that is understanding your audience's struggles. And there are for sure things like you want to be able to experiment and figure out ways to say things to get your audience to pay better attention and be like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen, right? And it takes experimentation to be able to do that. But you can go back as well to the pieces of your story that you know your audience are going to connect with every single time you want to tell a story about maybe a past memory, or you want to build trust with your audience. You want to get to them to see you as being relatable, or even like a client story, right? Maybe your story is not your client's story, so you can bring them back to a client story. And when you're repeating yourself, it isn't necessarily like repeating the same client story that you did 3 years ago, right? But it's the process of I'm repeating myself to build trust. So you're not necessarily repeating the same struggle over and over and over and over again. You're repeating the process of building trust. And sometimes your audience struggles change. You have to change with your audience, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to follow them because maybe 2 years ago, my audience was struggling with just posting consistently. And now my audience is struggling to figure out their starter story, and because their story is 10 years long and they don't know how to pinpoint their story and then create this story. So it's more intense,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can't just keep going back to that same struggle story. If your audience is evolving, if your audience is changing, you have to change with them. And I think that's another great thing to note about building a community and not just building an audience. An audience of people will look up to you, but a community of people will grow with you, right? So if you're building a community of people that want to grow with you, then you create the repetition in you have the same brand values, you have the same thoughts, and your opinions as a leader really doesn't change or can change depending on if you go through something in your story, right? But the process of building authority will always be the same. The process of building trust will always be the same. And they can be different stories, but it's that repetition of, I know how to build trust within my audience. Let me go back to a struggle story. Let me tell this struggle story. Let me connect to them. This will help them trust me. And say if they don't connect to it, okay, move on to the next struggle, right? Like it's not this thing that needs to be like, oh my God, they didn't buy when I talked about this struggle story. My whole thought process on that is like, if they don't see it today, they don't see it today, they'll see it tomorrow. Like it's not that big of a deal because again, we're thinking in private Facebook group layman's terms of like, I'm growing a private Facebook group, they're going to see the notification eventually. Like they're going to click on it eventually. So one person might not feel called to convert based off of that post, but somebody else might, right? It doesn't mean it was bad content. It just means that the right person didn't see it when you posted it
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day.
Well, and it could also just be that that person needs another piece of content to pull the trigger, right? Like I've had situations before where people have followed me for a while, and it's like every time they get exposed to some sort of story, some sort of piece of content, it's like it's one step closer to making a purchase. And my stuff is on the well, I'm kind of learning right now. I'm not as not as high ticket as I thought I was compared to some other people out there, but it's on the higher ticket side. So it's not like an easy purchase decision for people to just be like, oh, one piece of content was all it took. But it is something where it's that exposure to multiple pieces of content over time. It's like, yes, maybe there's the one that tips everything over and is the one that like got them to move. But every piece of content that they saw before that is doing some work to get to that tipping point. So I have one more question that's like kind of left field, but I feel like this has been on my mind a lot lately for a variety of reasons. I would love to hear if you have a particular perspective on the use of AI, like ChatGPT or any of those type of tools when creating content that is story based. If you guys are listening to the episode, she just made a face that I'm very excited to hear what is coming next.
Here's the thing. I think if 5 years ago, five and a half, 6 years ago, when I was first starting to grow my business, if I would have had the use of chat or the use of I think I would have used it to help me get to where I want to go. But I think that would have hurt me because I wouldn't have had the years of experience that I've needed to write every single day, the years of experience, because you can write a piece of content, but getting on a camera and having to record that piece of content and sounding like yourself and getting comfortable with the camera and like you can write a piece of content, post it by chat, whatever, I don't care. But truly, I believe the thing that separates even the apps, right? Because you found me on Threads, but before Threads, I was on TikTok for 2 years. You know, posting 2 videos a day, of me talking so that my community could truly feel who I am, could see who I am, could see how I talk, how I talk with my hands, right? And that connection, I think, is so powerful, and you can't replicate that, right? You have to be able to just get comfortable with yourself. And I don't use Chatter AI to write my own content, but it's because I practice every single day. And I tell my clients that as well. Like it takes practice, but are you doing this for results tomorrow or are you doing this to build a business to last you years to come?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to build a business for years to come, you have to understand the basic principles of how to get your audience to talk back to you. How can you get them to engage with you? How do you get them to have a conversation with you? How do you get them to trust you enough that if I'm doing a poll, you actually answer because you don't feel like I'm just going to respond with a mini chat? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many different things that just add up to doing this for a long time. And I think it can be supportive, but I also think you have to be able to be in the trenches for a little bit and figure out who you are,
Mm-hmm.
out how comfortable you can get on a camera, figure out how to talk to your audience and communicate with your audience without a barrier of like, this is what I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how it was created for me. So this is how I have to say it. Right? There's trust. Self-trust is a huge thing that takes business owners very, very far. Like you've been doing this 14 years. Like somewhere along the way, you learned that you had to trust yourself to get to where you want to go. Right? Trust yourself that you know the answers. Trust yourself that you're saying this thing the right way and that you can't say it the wrong way if you're truly in it to be here to grow a community for a long time. I hope that answered your question. I tell my community because I have my membership, and I'm like, you guys want to use chat? I don't care, but you have to know the principles that grow a business. And I said this to a client the other day. Using chat is like using a backup camera in your car. You still have to know how to be able to drive your car. Like, right? A backup camera will just assist you to help you reverse. You have to know how to drive a car. It's the same thing. You have to know how to run a business. Chat can't run a business for you. Can't write your content for you forever. You have to know how to write content, how to create content, how to do video content to grow a business.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'll say on that.
A little mic drop. I am in full agreement with that. And I think in some ways, we have this slightly competitive advantage having started our businesses before AI. I've been creating content for, yeah, going on like 15 years now, right? And so maybe two of those I had AI as a tool to do stuff. So for me, like I'll run into these conversations on mostly threads where people are like either aggressively anti AI or like their entire account is AI, their picture is AI. I'm just like, are you a real person or is this like I'm just communicating with a bot? That's always the fun exercise to try to figure out, do I keep having this conversation with this potential non-human? But all of that to say, I use it to organize and condense my like my original thought. So I love using it to like voice memo because I am like a verbal processor and I do have the bad habit of rambling and over explaining and talking too much. And so I like to use it as a way to say, okay, this is what I want to say. Help me like boil this down into something easier for people to consume. But I will still look at it and be like, is that how I want to say it? And that understanding of knowing if it's how I want to say it would not be possible if I hadn't learned how to say it without AI. So I've done the same thing where if I see, and maybe it's because I use ChatGPT so much that I very easily pick up on when somebody's using it, especially if they're using it as more like the generative, you tell me what to say kind of content. And I'll notice it and I'm like, oh, this is maybe not the best tool for you right now. And so I'll tell people, let's just take a break. Like, please just write it yourself for a bit. Just get used to learning how to express your thoughts. It's not going to be perfect, but you can always come back and use that tool to just make things a little easier for you. But like you said, I love the backup camera analogy because it's like you still know you have like the muscle memory of how to turn the wheel and press the gas and all of that, and you're just using that as a tool to not have to crank your neck around. But if you had never driven a car, that looking at that video, you're not going to know what to do. You're going to like run into your to your garage door or something. So yeah, I totally agree. And I think it'll be interesting as time goes on with all the changes with AI, and it changes so fast, and just figuring out what place it has in content creation. Cause I have two littles like you do as far as like little kids are concerned. And for me, it's like, there's only so much time and energy I have to create content. And if I can have a tool that makes it a little faster, I'm very excited about it. But I also think it's really easy to completely lose yourself and lose your voice, lose your message, lose your energy. And unfortunately, people go that direction very quickly and it's not fun. So, all of that to say, this has been super fun to chat with you about this, Mackenzie. If people want to learn more about how you teach storytelling, get some actual like strategies from you and learn how to do it for themselves, where can they learn more from you or connect with you or get the next thing that you have to offer?
Yeah, so I have a storytelling membership. It'll be 2 years old in March. And so I'm very excited about what's going on in there. I share storytelling prompts every single week. So I send out 4 prompts for you based on client stories, your stories, authority stories, education stories. Just, really easy hook starters on ways to start the conversation, which is one of the hardest parts for a lot of content creators. In that membership, it's in a school community. You will also get access to my client stories ebook. So sell their story, which is something we were talking about, is a lot of people struggling with not having the same story as their clients. It's so apparent to me that this is something people are struggling with. I created an ebook on it. So in that membership, you get that ebook as well. And I think again, it's just the consistency of it's a tool. You have to use it like a muscle, right? Like just working at it every single day is something that I'm really keen on to get to where you want to go. So practicing story every day, that's why there's 4 prompts in there, your content for the week. Get help, get support in there to be able to use story to grow, monetize your business.
I love it. Well, thank you, Mackenzie. It was really awesome to get to chat with you after creeping on the posts that are showing up on my thread feed. I'm like so funny about threads right now. It's like I have found myself on there even more than Instagram lately. I'm like, I don't know what that says about me. I don't know what that says about Instagram, but I feel so overstimulated by Instagram that I'm like, I just want to talk to some real people. Let's go on the thread. So it's been really awesome to get to hear your story and to get to hear your approach. And I know that the work you're doing is so important for people who they want to be able to show up authentically. They want to be able to connect with people and they don't want to have this heaviness of having to do, this super formalized marketing strategy that doesn't feel like them, feels forced, feels awkward, and then half the time doesn't even do anything for them anyway. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and thanks to all of you guys for hanging out with us. We'll see you here next week on the Nourish CEO podcast. Take care, everybody. If you're listening to this and realizing that you're ready for more in your business, more income, more alignment, more confidence in the value of your work, then I want to invite you into a deeper level of support. Inside my mentorship, the Nourished Business Accelerator, I help coaches and experts like you create a premium offer that reflects the actual transformation they deliver and build a clean, sustainable system for enrolling dream clients consistently, all without cold DMs, manipulative tactics, or high-pressure sales calls that make your stomach turn. Everything we do is grounded, ethical, and designed to help you grow with integrity and ease. When you're doing work that runs this deep, you deserve real mentorship from someone who's been through every season of business and can walk you through it step by step. And the truth is, growth feels so much more aligned and so much more powerful when you're surrounded by an intimate group of ambitious, ethical entrepreneurs who are committed to building their businesses the right way, not the hustly, performative way that the online world so often pushes. Most people don't realize how heavy their business feels until they finally experience what it's like to be supported at this high of a level. The NBA is the space where you will stop second-guessing yourself, stop piecing things together alone, and step fully into the leadership and strategy that make your business feel profitable, spacious, and deeply aligned with who you are. So, if you're ready to grow your business in a way that honors your expertise, supports your offline life, and helps you impact more clients without burning yourself out in the process, the NBA is your next step. And in case you haven't heard already, this is the last time I'm going to be running this program for good. And you have to get your application in by January 31st if you want to do this program with me before my entire offer suite changes. To learn more or apply now, send me a DM on Instagram with the word NBA to @LauraSchoenfeldRD, or you can check the show notes for the link. I would love to support you as you grow into your next level as an online entrepreneur.